When plague entered a medieval town, it did not arrive with noise or warning. There was no single moment when people could say it had begun. Life simply started to fracture. One day the streets were loud with voices, carts, and market cries. The next they were strangely quiet. People did not know what bacteria were. They did not understand infection, immunity, or how disease moved invisibly from body to body. There were no laboratories, no protective clothing, no organized medical response. When plague appeared, medieval people were left alone with fear, rumor, faith, and whatever instincts they could still trust. The first sign was often sudden, unexplained death. A neighbor who appeared healthy in the morning collapsed by evening. A child developed a fever, cried through the night, and was dead by dawn. Swellings appeared under the skin. Dark blotches spread across bodies. Breathing became painful and shallow. Death moved faster than understanding. Bells rang constantly, until their sound lost meaning and became part of the background of terror. Streets emptied. Shops closed without explanation. Even the air itself was believed to be dangerous. People believed plague traveled through foul smells, corrupted winds, poisoned air, or divine breath. The idea of invisible contagion did not exist. Fear focused on atmosphere. Windows were shut or open depending on belief. Some sealed their homes to keep bad air out. Others opened doors wide to let it escape. Faces were covered with cloth soaked in vinegar, wine, or urine. Fires burned day and night to cleanse rooms. Smoke filled entire neighborhoods until the line between safety and suffocation disappeared. Those with money fled first. Wealthy families abandoned cities for countryside estates, convinced distance meant safety. Servants were dismissed or left behind. Responsibility ended where fear began. But plague followed roads, travelers, carts, clothing, animals, and food. Villages that accepted refugees often suffered worse outbreaks than the cities themselves. Poorer people had no escape. They remained trapped in overcrowded districts where disease passed easily from body to body. With no doctors to rely on, medieval people turned to what they trusted most: religion, tradition, and desperation. Churches filled with the sick, the terrified, and the dying. Bells rang not just for prayer, but as warnings. Processions marched through streets as crowds begged God for mercy. People carried relics, icons, bones of saints, and scraps of scripture. Some joined flagellant groups, whipping themselves publicly until blood soaked their backs, believing shared suffering might end divine punishment. Confession became frantic and public. People shouted sins in streets, convinced plague was punishment for moral failure. Fear erased shame and privacy. Faith offered comfort but also danger. Crowds gathered to pray, unknowingly accelerating the spread of disease. What felt like salvation often became another path to death. Homes transformed into places of isolation and silent horror. Families barricaded themselves inside, sealing doors with wax, pitch, or cloth. Windows were covered. Contact with neighbors ended completely. When sickness entered a household, panic followed. Some families locked sick members in rooms and left food outside the door. Not out of cruelty but terror. Parents listened to children cry behind walls they were too afraid to cross. Love struggled against survival, and survival often won. Traditional remedies offered hope without results. People drank vinegar daily, swallowed crushed pearls or gemstones, and wore amulets made of animal bones, herbs, or religious symbols. Physicians who existed prescribed mixtures of mercury, arsenic, and sulfur. These poisons weakened already dying bodies. Strong smells were believed to fight disease, so homes filled with incense, burned pitch, rosemary, juniper, and sulfur until breathing itself became painful. Bloodletting was among the most common responses. Leeches were applied to swollen skin. Knives opened veins to release what were believed to be corrupted humors. Weak patients bled faster than the disease could kill them. Treatment often became execution disguised as care. As death accelerated, normal burial practices collapsed. Graveyards filled beyond capacity. Coffins disappeared. Bodies were stacked in mass graves without ceremony. Families buried loved ones in gardens, courtyards, or shallow pits. Corpses lay in streets for days when no one dared to touch them. The smell of decay became constant. Dogs, rats, and birds fed on the dead, unknowingly spreading disease even further. Fear poisoned human relationships. Houses with sickness were marked. Doors were painted, sealed, or nailed shut from the outside. Entire families were imprisoned inside their homes until everyone died or the plague passed. Food was sometimes left at doors. Sometimes nothing was left at all. Survival depended entirely on whether neighbors chose mercy or fear. Markets collapsed. Trade stopped. Crafts vanished overnight. Farmers refused to enter cities. Bakers closed shops. Grain rotted in storage or burned and used. Hunger followed disease, weakening bodies already fighting infection. Desperation drove people to scavenge abandoned homes for food, clothing, or tools, risking infection with every step. Social order eroded rapidly. Laws lost meaning. Courts stopped functioning. Guards fled or died. Thieves looted empty homes freely. Violence increased. Some believed the world was ending. Others embraced excess, drinking and indulgence, convinced survival had no meaning. Taverns filled with the desperate. Morality blurred under the weight of constant death. Not everyone fled or hid. Some stayed to help the dying. Clergy, caretakers, gravediggers, and volunteers worked until they collapsed. Many knew they would die. They stayed because no one else would. Their reward was usually an unmarked grave and a forgotten name. Children suffered uniquely and brutally. Orphans filled streets, monasteries, and convents. Entire families vanished. Skills, trades, and knowledge died with them. Survivors grew up shaped by trauma, having watched death become ordinary, expected, and unavoidable. Animals were blamed as carriers of evil. Cats and dogs were slaughtered in large numbers. This only worsened the plague, allowing rats to multiply unchecked. Fear and ignorance turned survival into self-destruction. As weeks passed, chaos faded into silence. Fires went out. Streets emptied completely. Grass grew between stones. Survivors emerged cautiously, unsure whether danger had passed or merely paused. Many found their towns unrecognizable. Friends, family, and neighbors were gone. Entire districts stood empty. The smell of death lingered long after bodies were buried. Those who survived searched for meaning. Some became deeply religious, believing they had been spared for a reason. Others lost faith entirely. Trauma reshaped society. Labor shortages shifted power away from elites. Survivors demanded wages, land, and rights. Old systems cracked under the weight of absence and loss. Yet none of this knowledge protected them from the next outbreak. Plague returned again and again. Each time, fear resurfaced instantly. Each time, people repeated the same rituals, the same mistakes. Without doctors, without science, medieval society faced disease armed only with belief, instinct, endurance, and hope. Plague was not a single catastrophe. It was a recurring shadow over generations. Medieval people did not fight plague with medicine. They fought it with prayer, isolation, superstition, sacrifice, fear, and faith. And very often, that was not enough.